WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Senator Joan Ballweg of Markesan is the Republican incumbent candidate for the 14th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Senator Ballweg, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I really do appreciate what WisconsinEye does with with these candidate opportunities, with your newsmakers, with just keeping track of the legislature and providing that access to the Wisconsin public. So thank you very much for your mission.
Well, we really appreciate you participating in the candidate interviews too. So I'll just start by asking you, what's your campaign's key message? Why are you running for re-election to the Senate?
Well, I can't wait to get back to the Senate to continue the good work that I've been doing over the last couple of years, and especially these last 2 years in the Senate as the Senate Chair for Agriculture and Tourism. There are some great initiatives that we've gotten started, like the Agricultural Export Program. We're starting to see some benefits of that, something that helps our producers, our folks that are making our food, and is spreading agricultural products and food around Wisconsin and around the world. And then with some of the initiatives I've been able to do with the Department of Tourism, some of the things that we have encouraged over the years to allow them to have better marketing tools. And they're doing a great job with that, but also an initiative that I had this year, which was the Opportunity Fund, so that we have cash ready if we ever get the chance again to do another Top Chef or another NFL draft. So these are all things I want to make sure that we can continue. But my big passion, being an elementary teacher to start out with in my career, is to do some of the things to share that background and information with my legislative colleagues. And some years ago, I worked with Democratic Senator, now retired, Julie Lassa, to start the Wisconsin Legislative Children's Caucus. And that's something that we still have. I'm one of the 4 co-chairs, one chair from each caucus, from each house. And we bring to the legislature programming in association with the Prevention Board to make sure that our colleagues understand what we can do and understand better what happens with early childhood, adverse childhood experiences, trauma, to be trauma informed. All of these things are things that I think are important, and I want to be there to keep working on them.
So if you're reelected to the Senate, what's just one example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Well, the first one I would go back to is one that we almost got across the finish line this year, and that is expansion of postpartum coverage for 12 months for our moms who are on Badger Care. So right now we have a good benefit, but it's for 60 days. And to expand it to 12 months would be so helpful. Something that we need to do to make sure that we're keeping track for these new moms if they have a condition, a chronic condition that may have been exacerbated during their pregnancy. Some conditions don't show up, like postpartum depression. It doesn't show up in the first 6 months. And Wisconsin has not been doing a great job when it comes to taking care of our moms with maternal mortality and morbidity. And it's important that we have mom there for our youngest Wisconsinites so that mom and baby can be healthy together. So that's where I would go first.
Well, as you know, if you're reelected to the Senate, we're entering a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be a priority for you for use of the surplus spending?
Well, first we have to worry about costs to continue. So the state, just like individuals, just like businesses, have been hit hard by inflation, by the cost of interest. We have lots of employees here in the state. We've done some things to try to keep them and retain them. But costs to continue, whether it is our state employees, whether it's supporting K-12 education, higher education, making sure that we can have our social safety nets, that we partner with all our counties to make sure that we can continue during the services that we already have been committed to.
What about,
but then the second thing is the number one thing that we hear is roads. And if you've been driving around at all this summer and fall, you know that we're doing a lot of road construction right now here in the state of Wisconsin. And happy to say that we did increase the highway maintenance and road maintenance to our counties and our municipalities. Unfortunately, the governor did veto the increase for our towns, but we have two special programs. One that we've been doing now for 3 budgets, and I think we need to continue that, and that is the Municipal Road Improvement Program. It's a grant program for a pool of $100 million. That is being very well used going forward. And then the new program that we did this year for $150 million, the Agricultural Road Improvement Program. So the first $50 million of that is already out the door, but the applications were well over $200 million. So even with this next $100 million that they're getting applications for now is not going to be sufficient. So that's another issue, especially in my rural district. We need to continue that kind of a program to make sure that our rural roads are upgraded to stand the test of agriculture right now.
What about tax cuts, tax reform? Is that a priority in your platform?
Well, certainly we've been working to try to do a middle class tax cut through the last biennium. Several different ways we tried to do that, which the governor vetoed, all except the child care tax cut, which was good. That was a good start. The tax cut that I was promoting is the marriage penalty. So we know that it could cost you more in taxes if you are joint filers rather than single filers. We also wanted to get something done for our senior citizens and our retirees, which would be just outstanding because they're the ones that have fixed incomes. They're struggling with inflation, with rising property taxes, helping them to be able to stay in their home with a larger tax deduction for sure. And then in the last go-around, we tried to reduce taxes for everyone up to $150,000 of joint filers, which I think that is middle class. I think that is something we should continue to point toward.
What's your campaign's priority for K-12 education?
One of the things that we've heard just recently that as a former teacher, I know how important data is. And with the changes that our state school superintendent is making, I think that's going to make it harder for our frontline teachers to understand where our individual student is going. It's going to make it harder for the public to understand what the trends are for a particular school district. So I'm very disappointed that is something that is coming down the pike. But for individual school districts, the number one thing that I hear is that we need more money to fund special education. We've increased that over the last couple of years. We're at about 33% of coverage right now. School districts can have a problem if they have 1 or 2 really difficult cases. And we do some things for those high-cost special needs students also. But in general, the number one stressor on our school districts is filling the need for special needs kids.
So increase that special ed
so
reimbursement?
yes, keep making sure that we increase that. And for our rural communities, many of which are suffering from declining enrollment, make sure that we can support them with special categorical aids like sparsity aid or high-cost transportation.
What about higher education? What is the future of Wisconsin's four-year colleges, two-year colleges, technical colleges look like to you? And what's the legislature's role? What should be their focus?
Sure. Well, the first thing we realize is that there are less young people in our K-12 system, so there are less traditional students that are going into our higher ed programs. I appreciate that President Rothman is working to right-size the UW system, but things have changed over the years. I started my college 2 years at one of those two-year colleges at UW Waukesha, one of the ones that are now slated to be closed, and then I went on to UW Stevens Point, but because I did that, I was able to save enough money to pay for my own college education from the beginning to end.
What should happen with the two-year colleges?
Which is very helpful, of course. But nowadays, there are so many different options for our traditional students as well as our non-traditional students. There is online courses. In my day, there was correspondence courses. So there's online courses. You can get your degrees that way. Our great technical college system also has courses where you can start your 4-year degree at a technical college system and then transfer to one of the UWs or one of the 4-year private institutions. We have more opportunity through apprenticeships right now. And another thing that we're doing is dual credit, and high school students that are able to collect college credits so they can get to school with a pocket full of credits to be more cost effective and shorten the time they're at school. So
does the legislature need to increase funding throughout that system, or what change should the legislature focus on?
Well, I think dual credit is very important. I think making sure that the campuses are being right-sized, that there is great, and there is, but even more collaboration between our technical college system and our UW system. I know they've been working for years, and they're getting better and better at figuring out the transfers of credits moving forward. So I think we need to support all those initiatives. And with new leadership in the technical college system, I think there's a real opportunity to engage.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and what should you do? What should the legislature do on that?
Well, there again, we just have a whole lot less people. So our baby boomers are not being replaced by young people coming up. Our employers are trying to figure out through technology, through robots, through whatever they can, try to fill the bill. But we're still going to need those folks, right? So some of the things that we can do is just what I said, making sure that our technical college system, our 4-year colleges are ready to go and partner very well with our businesses, work on retention. One of the things we need to do also is to encourage our employers to be engaged from a benefits side when it comes to child care. Make sure that our young families and those folks who want to stay in the workforce because it's better for them in their career if they can do that while they have a young family. And being flexible as an employer is just the best thing that they could probably do, whether it's supporting them monetarily or slots when it comes to child care. We've been increasing those supports for those people that are eligible for the Wisconsin Shares program, trying to help with that in the last budget.
You see
also
more of that, perhaps?
Exactly. But I would really appreciate if the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation would go back to a program that we had several years ago in trying to attract some of these military personnel that are able to retire. They have job fairs. Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation could attend some of these on-base job fairs, bring some employers with them to try to get these folks that are good workers. They are experienced. They could probably fit very well into many of our industries and businesses, and show off that Wisconsin has a great package for veterans. And so these are all things that I think would help us attract more folks into Wisconsin.
I have a few more workforce questions for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I wouldn't support a requirement to be able to do that, because I do believe that some of these specialty projects may require specialists that may be coming from other parts of the state. Other parts of the nation. I would certainly encourage our businesses to hire locally. That would be the number one thing. But definitely, we need to first of all, our responsibility to the public is that these projects are cost effective, and that these projects are efficiently done. And that may or may not mean that we have all Wisconsin workers on the job.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this, and what should be done about it?
We haven't had that suggestion come up to the office in the Capitol, but obviously it is something that we're now hearing about and is being talked about. I would look first to the Department of Workforce Development. I mean, they are responsible for these types of issues. I would hope that employers that would see this happening would be reporting that to the department, and I would ask the department to come back to the legislature to see if there was a legislative fix or something that needed to be done. But as an individual concerned coming to the office, that's where I would refer folks if they came across this issue.
What about housing? Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control, while others feel that keeping rent artificially low would decrease rental supply. What's your sense of housing as an issue, and what do you think best addresses rental housing affordability?
Well, one of the questions has to do with rent control, and I don't think that's the answer. Landlords feel the pinch just like any other individual or any other business with inflation, with the high cost of interest rates, because they're paying mortgages on these properties, and increasing property taxes that they're all responsible for.
Should the state be incentivizing building more rentals?
Well, what we have done in the last session, we put together a package of $525 million in housing incentives. So it was for refurbishing and remodeling some existing single family, some second floor downtown residences. We carved out for some of our rural areas that some of this money should also be there, because what I've heard from many of my rural communities, that it's so much easier to build in Madison or Middleton than in the rural areas because of workforce, because of higher transportation costs, those kinds of things. So I have seen, like in the city of Portage, they have partnered with a contractor to build affordable housing in their community, more workforce housing. So I think this is something that our local communities are continually going to try to get involved in, but the state does need to incentivize that some of our rural communities can get part of this grant money also.
Moving on to health care. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin, which I know you're aware of. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Well, again, inflation, high cost of goods, workforce is a problem no matter what industry you're in. But what I've been promoting and supporting over the last several years is something that helps our rural hospitals, and that is critical access care. And so this is a program for our smaller rural hospitals that they get cost for any MA patients that come into their system so that they can sustain themselves moving forward, so that in our rural towns we have somebody nearby that when the ambulance comes by, they have a first line of support moving forward. So I've supported this both in our state budget and encouraged our federal partners to keep that up.
Do you support an increase in the Medicaid reimbursement to hospitals generally then?
Well, that's another thing that we need to talk about. We do have some of that with which it's called our DISH payments. Mm-hmm. So we have put money into that so that outside of the rural communities where we have the critical access hospitals, for some of our hospitals that are in our larger cities that serve more of that population, that we have put extra money into them to try to prevent their closures and keep them afloat also. Sure. And keep that care close to home.
What about mental health care? What are you hearing about mental health care, and how do you propose addressing that issue?
Well, it's something that I've been working on for a number of years. We have a child psychology consultation line. This is something that I've partnered with to move forward some years ago, where our primary care providers and our pediatricians have a professional that they can call on to address a youngster that may come into their practice, whether they're then put together with a professional that needs to help them on a consultant basis, or if there's medication that they want to suggest for that young person. I worked really hard to try to get something similar as an adult consultation line in this last budget also. That's something else that I would move forward on. But it's not a new issue. Probably 5 years ago, I led a task force on suicide prevention, and we had the focus on a couple different areas that were high in suicidal incidents: farmers, veterans, law enforcement, and of course youth. And because of that work that we did in our task force, there were several bills that came through that were helping to support K-12 and higher education regarding access. Just one of the things that it required is the hotline to be on the back of school IDs. Well, now it's much easier. It's 988, which we endorsed through that program. Of course, that's a federal issue. Long time waiting, but at least we have it now. And, of course, we just got another one of our bills done this year, funding for some rural community supports. It's not all the major folks that are doing the work like NAMI or Mental Health America, but there are community organizations with our health departments and with our sheriff's departments that are doing this work also, and now they are able to get some grant money through the state also.
I want to keep us moving along here, and I have to ask you about abortion policy. How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
Well, I want people to be clear on what my actual stance is when it comes to women's reproductive health. So I do believe that women should have access to whatever type of birth control that they feel comfortable with moving forward. I know as a woman who has had several miscarriages that when you go in following that miscarriage and have a procedure done like a DNC. It's not an abortion. There are problems and difficulties that come up with pregnancies. I'm very aware of that, and the priority should be the health of the mother moving forward. But we also have families that want to have a family, and sometimes making sure that infertility treatments, whether it's IVF or any of those, is something that should be available to folks. In my family and with people I know, I've been supportive of these types of ways that they can grow their families or start their families.
So you support access to reproductive health care. Does that include abortion, and then within what sort of limits?
Well, right now the abortion question is in front of our state Supreme Court, and I expect that we'll be getting an answer from them in the not too distant future. So it's out of the legislature's hands at this point.
So you don't have a position on the number of weeks that is comfortable for you?
I've supported the 20-week a couple of years ago when that came up. We'll see what the Supreme Court says.
Thank you. Transportation. You did talk a little bit about your support for roads, and particularly in rural areas. Is there anything else you want to add about your support for transportation?
Well, I think that this is something that is key to making sure that our infrastructure, our public access, it's used in our agricultural industry, it's used in our tourism industry, it's used in our manufacturing industry. So making sure that our roads are moving forward. We have plans that go for 20, 25 years to upgrade the Interstate 39, 90, 94, and something that I've been keeping track of and been engaged with. We have a lot of development that's going on in that corridor, and everyone is itching to be the next enhancement for their particular overpass or exit.
Environment, PFAS, water contaminants are concerned for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how should the state address it?
Absolutely. So a budget or two ago, one of the first things I did was what we heard with the firefighting foam. And all our fire departments had this firefighting foam with PFAS. So I led the effort to reclaim that firefighting foam and have the state take responsibility for properly disposing of it so that we got that out of the system. And then I was a big supporter of the $125 million that we put into a PFAS program. It's unfortunate that it hasn't come to fruition at this point, but there are many things that we can continue to do through the Clean Water Program that our local communities have access to if they have a detect, and I'm very hopeful that this $125 million at least will be available to our communities to address this problem.
We are down to our final two questions. I'd like to ask you first, how do you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Well, I would say it's on a professional basis, it's my experience. I've been a classroom teacher. My husband and I have a business that we have grown to be successful. Our major goal is excellent customer service. We pride ourselves in having a supportive culture for our employees, good benefit package, and good family supporting jobs moving forward. And then on the public service side, I've been a local official as an alderperson and as a mayor, and that's why I see it so importantly that there should be cooperation between our local and our state governments. And I'm just excited to be able to do so many things on the state side, support the agriculture and tourism industries, which are the major industries in the 14th Senate District, and make sure that I'm listening to individuals. And that's where most of the proposals come from. It's things that individuals need. It's things that our communities need, and try to get them through the legislative process. But then the other thing that my office I take most pride in is constituent services. Trying to help people if they need their unemployment, if they need to get their license so they can get started working through the Department of Safety and Professional Services, or even making sure that they are approved to go take their RN boards. These are the things that I think are most valuable that I can contribute.
If you're reelected to the Senate, you get this magic wand you can use in the legislature to have one issue resolved in a way that brings all parties together. What would you use the magic wand for? What's the issue?
Well, the issue I talked about that I most want to get done is postpartum, but the magic wand bringing people together, I think, is to have understanding and to make sure that people are being supportive of each other. One of the things that I've done in my legislative term, brought together Senator Lassa and myself, started the Legislative Children's Caucus. I've been an elected leader on a national organization, the Council of State Governments, in both regional and national. Council of State Governments is bipartisan, three-branch organization. And so I can sit down with a Democratic legislator from Illinois and we can talk about what's our strategy to try to get expansion of postpartum in our particular states. I can sit down with Senator Johnson on the executive board of that committee. First time I belonged to that organization, I got to be a good friend of Senator Risser and his wife when we were doing work together on those executive boards. And then finally, it gives us the opportunity. I sat down once with Republican Senator James and Democrat Senator Agard, and they both talked to me about how I could help them with a proposal that they were working on. I think it's important that we understand that there are going to be issues that we may not agree on, but we can be agreeable. And civility is the number one thing that I think if I had a magic wand, that's what I would bring to the legislature, because it's the most important thing I think the public would like to see us do.
Well, thank you, Senator Joan Ballweg of Markesan, the Republican incumbent candidate for the 14th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Senator Ballweg, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.